What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the ScotianCanadien studio. I am glad to be back with you guys, and it is about time that we talk some Habs. Now, if you're new to this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be a lot of great Habs content coming your guys' way through the off season, and if you're a Habs fan, you're going to want to see that popping up in your YouTube feed. So hit that subscribe button, and of course, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at ScotianCanadien. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the big rumor. According to Don Brennan of the Ottawa Citizen, Erik Karlsson, as an unrestricted free agent, wants competitive offers from the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens. What? This is insane. The fact that Montreal is linked to an unrestricted free agent of Karlsson's status is huge news for the organization, and it is extremely exciting news for us as Habs fans. This could be a huge step forward in top quality players wanting to come to Montreal and looking at Montreal as a great destination to come play hockey and hopefully go on some long cup runs. So that's some huge news in and of itself. That is amazing. Now, I still feel like we should take this rumor with a grain of salt, maybe a handful of salt, because we definitely should be excited. But nevertheless, this isn't coming from a guy like Bob McKenzie or Elliot Friedman, where when they talk, it's more likely closer to fact than rumor. But regardless, this seems like a pretty strong rumor, and it makes sense. What they're saying is that Erik Karlsson wants to play close to Ottawa because that is where his wife is from. And Montreal is only a 2-hour drive away from Montreal. And not only that, I mean, Montreal's clearly shown that they're on the upswing, so I can see why he'd look at Montreal as a good destination to come play hockey. So it's great news. Now, it may seem like a no-brainer to get Erik Karlsson to sign on that dotted line and lock him up long term, but I feel like I need to make a case as to why keeping the status quo could also be a responsible thing to do as well. Now, if you are locking up Erik Karlsson, you are paying top dollar. So first and foremost, you are paying him long term for a very high price. Minimum, you are paying him $10 million per year, and it is definitely going to be 7 years, the maximum amount of term that you can offer a free agent, because I don't think he's going anywhere for any less term than that 7 years. So you'd be committing to him long term, and could that be risky where he's 29 years old and recently dealt with some injuries? I wouldn't say that he's injury prone, but his recent injuries definitely have to be of concern. Now, he played a very, very long career without dealing with many significant injuries. He had 3 years in a row where he played full 82-game seasons and put up absolutely insane offensive numbers. For example, in 2014-15, 82 games played, 21 goals as a defenseman. Unbelievable. 45 assists for 66 points. The following year, in 2015-16, once again, played a full season, 16 goals. So the goal total's down a bit, but 66 assists. That's unbelievable. 82 points, a point per game as a defenseman. That is almost unheard of. Then in 2016-17, 77 games played, 17 goals, 54 assists for 71 points. And then in 2017-18, he dealt with that ankle injury closer to the end of the year. But in that season, 71 games played, 9 goals, 53 assists for 62 points. In those playoffs with the Ottawa Senators, he went on that playoff run and dealt with that ankle injury, played absolutely insane on a broken ankle. 19 games played, 2 goals, 16 assists, 18 points in 19 games despite playing on a bummed ankle. Unbelievable, 0.94 points per game pace. Then in this most recent, in these most recent NHL playoffs for the San Jose Sharks, he's been dealing with a groin injury, and it was very noticeable in the playoffs, and he dealt with it through the season as well. Through the season, it limited him to 53 games played. He only had 3 goals, but he had 42 assists. That's 45 points and a 0.84 points per game pace through a full season, which falls pretty much in line with his career average. Then through the playoffs, despite playing with a bad groin, 19 games played, 2 goals, 14 assists for 16 points in 19 games with a bad groin. Now, So the offensive totals are still there despite his injuries, but the main concern people are having is his ability to defend, specifically on the rush. People have been noticing, and I've seen it, him getting beat wide, defending the rush. Seems like his mobility has taken a bit of a hit between the ankle injury and the groin injury. So this could definitely be a concern if you're locking a 29-year-old up on a 7-year deal that would end when he's 36. It's definitely something you'd have to take into consideration and be very careful about if you're making this contract offer. Not only that, but if you're bringing in Erik Karlsson, the Montreal Canadiens, if you look at their decor, they already have Shea Weber, who's a right-handed shot. And then behind him, obviously, you have Jeff Petrie, who's also a right-handed shot. So if you bring Erik Karlsson in, you're almost in a position where you have to rearrange and reshuffle your decor. And Montreal's decor on the right is already strong. So they're not in a position where they have to sign Erik Karlsson. But, I mean, how do you pass up the opportunity to do so? That's the thing. But if you bring him in, you're likely looking at having to possibly trade away one of your right-handed defensemen. Because some would say you could, maybe try Jeff Petrie on the left side or try Erik Karlsson on the left side. But that might work in the short term, but I don't think that's something you want to do long term, having a guy playing on his offside. You don't commonly see that in the NHL, and preferably you want a balance of left and right-handed shots in your decor. If you want to be a true cup team and a balanced team. So I don't think that would be a long-term fix. And the other thing, I don't think it would be responsible to have over $20 million, well over $20 million, locked up on just right-handed defensemen. And furthermore, if you're bringing in Erik Karlsson, that likely drops Jeff Petrie down to the bottom pair, which he is capable of so much more. And it really wouldn't make sense for the Habs to be paying him $5.5 million to be playing on that bottom pair. Now, the reason why I say Jeff Petrie's the odd man out is I feel like I got to mention this. Shea Weber is going nowhere. Marc Bergevin brought him in. Marc Bergevin and Claude Julien also named him captain recently. He's a pillar in this organization. He's our captain for the foreseeable future. He's well worth the $7.8 million cap hit that he has throughout the rest of his career. It's a plus that we don't have to renegotiate with him. He plays a style of game that is sustainable into his mid-30s. And he's going to be around. I'd say minimum for the next 4 years, Shea Weber is a Montreal Canadien. So right there, if we're bringing in Erik Karlsson, we know that we have Shea Weber and Erik Karlsson on the right side, and likely Petrie as the odd man out. Now, Petrie's trade value is pretty much at the highest it likely will be in his career. He's coming off a career year. He had 82 games played, 13 goals, 33 assists for 46 points. Not only that, Jeff Petrie put up 190 hits. He was Montreal's most physical player by quite a large margin. He is a very valuable player, and the thing is, it may make sense to trade him because his value is so high right now, but you also have to take into consideration that he has 2 years left on his contract at $5.5 million. That is a great contract for a player of his caliber, and you know what you are going to get from Jeff Petrie, a guy who's never really dealt with significant injuries throughout his career, and that contract would be ending at a pretty good time. At 33 years old, he would be coming off his contract. Montreal could evaluate at a later time if they wanted to trade him or keep him as an own rental if they go on a playoff run or whatnot. But the other thing too, with the expansion draft coming up, that's a good Petrie's contract is a good one to have, because you don't know how the expansion draft is going to go, and you definitely have to plan ahead for that, because you don't want to be in a position where you have to protect a bunch of guys and possibly lose another strong asset to the expansion draft. So you got to take that into consideration. So I can see why keeping Petrie would be the safe route to go, and skipping on Erik Karlsson, especially if you're concerned about the injury trouble. But it's so hard to pass up on Erik Karlsson. And if you did bring him in, you could try and trade Jeff Petrie to help balance out another area of your roster. Do you use him to balance out your left side D, which for the Montreal Canadiens right now, it's a lot weaker than ideally you'd want. You definitely want your D to be a lot stronger on that left side. It's mainly the inexperience, and they're so young right now. We have Victor Mete and Kulak, so there's definitely a hole on the left side, which maybe you can trade Jeff Petrie for a left-handed defenseman. Not sure how often that happens, though, a 1-for-1 where you trade a righty for a lefty, but it is possible. Or do you package Petrie with Armia to try and bring in a right-wing sniper? That would also be an option. Petrie would definitely hold value and be a piece that could be used to improve Montreal's roster. If essentially what you're doing is bringing in Erik Karlsson at 10 mil or so, and then to replace Petrie for just 4.5 mil additional money spent. You'd be going from 5.5 with Petrie to around 10 with Karlsson. So by bringing in Karlsson, you put yourself in a situation where you got to work through some other issues, and it's a lot easier said than done to just trade Jeff Petrie, especially when you take into consideration that he has a modified no move clause on his contract. Quick fun fact here, he had a full no move clause for the first 3 years of his contract. Pretty slick negotiation tactics there, and contract work from Marc Bergevin, having that full no move clause reduced to a partial or a modified no move clause for the last 3 years. So the fact that Bergevin snuck that in there is what makes this acquisition of Erik Karlsson and potential trade of Petrie even possible in the first place. Because if Petrie had a full no move clause, he'd likely be going nowhere, and it'd be really difficult to trade him because he'd have to agree to any trade. But even still, with the modified no move clause, it still completely eliminates half the league. He can submit a 15-team list that he does not want to be traded to unless he agrees. And that basically eliminates half the league and would make it a little harder for you to get full value for a guy like Jeff Petrie. So it's a lot easier said than done to just bring in Jeff Petrie or bring in Erik Karlsson and trade away Jeff Petrie to balance it out, especially in a short time frame. Mind you, there might not be anything wrong with going with Weber, Karlsson, and Petrie for the short term, but definitely, preferably for the long term, you'd have to balance out your D-core with those left and right-handed shots and get Montreal's left side D a little bit stronger. The other thing I'd be a little bit concerned about with trading away Jeff Petrie is he is one of the leaders in Montreal's room. He's one of the hardest working guys on the roster. So you'd really be risking throwing off team chemistry by shipping him off. What sort of message would that send the rest of the team by trading him away, one of the hardest workers? Montreal's worked so hard to get this team attitude together and work ethic, that strong work ethic and culture together. Do you risk messing that up by trading away Jeff Petrie? That's something else you really need to think about. And at the end of the day, whatever decision Bergevin makes, he's got to live with the consequences. So it would be a very big decision, but and it's tough decisions, but it's definitely a position I'm sure he loves being in. The fact that Karlsson is interested in coming to the Habs in the first place is huge, and it definitely could be a sign that players around the league, especially top-end players, are changing their mind, and the perception of the Canadians moving forward is changing. I think we've definitely proved we're on the upswing, so that's a good sign. Now, I just want to touch on this right quick. I've seen like the major hockey media content providers out there releasing articles like this is an opportunity that Montreal cannot pass up, basically making it sound like they have to get Erik Karlsson signed up. And like I said, it's a lot easier said than done, and Montreal's right side D already looks very good. This isn't a do or die situation that Montreal is in, but it's definitely a situation that Bergevin will have to evaluate very carefully, and I'm sure he will evaluate Karlsson's injury troubles, see if that's going to hinder him moving forward, and then also evaluate Jeff Petrie's game, what you think you'll get from him moving forward from the team, or what you think you could get from him on the market. Definitely a lot of hard work to be done from here on out. I am so conflicted on what I would want to see this team do, but I have a hard time passing up on Erik Karlsson. I feel like his injury troubles aren't as significant as they're being made out to be. I feel like he could heal fully and get back to or stay at the elite level of play that he is capable of. It'd definitely be very interesting to see him join the Montreal Canadiens, having Shea Weber and Erik Karlsson on Montreal's defense. Who would have ever thought that would even be something? Ugh, I can't even believe that we're even talking about this. But seeing a lot of different opinions online. I think people are very mixed on it. So I would love to hear what you guys think. So get at me down in the comments. Let me know what you think of this entire situation. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me. I cannot wait to hear what you guys have to say. That's about it, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you like my content. And of course, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ScotianCanadien. Cheers, guys. Go Habs, go, baby.